So I'm going to cover a couple topics. And then I'm going to tell you right now that I'm not a professional actor, but my wife and I are going to do a little acting up here for you. And one of my students, who's an intern, Mariana, is going to come help. So that'll be exciting about halfway through. But don't expect too much, because we're not professionals. So I've entitled tonight's presentation, Your Payday. So there's two major topics. The one we're going to spend the most time on is how to negotiate pay. And we'll cover that the last part. The first part, I want to kind of lead into it by talking about how you can prepare yourself for your first job, or if you're already in the workforce, how can you prepare for new career opportunities. So let me ask you a question. What's the number one way to find a job? By far. For many years, this research, there's one way that's most effective. Yes?
Is it networking?
Yes.
Like word of mouth?
Word of mouth? Networking, word of mouth? Yeah. It's who you know. Now, that doesn't mean you need to actually personally know somebody. But if you can network, like the first answer that was given, that is the number one way to find a job. And so who here is a member of LinkedIn? Okay. Do you want to tell us? So there's a few that aren't. A lot of you are, and I'm going to just tell you tonight, sign up. Really. It's one of the best networks. But can you just describe briefly what LinkedIn is?
In my opinion, LinkedIn is kind of like a business Facebook. It's a social media platform that allows you to connect with friends, coworkers, or big-time business professionals and post your resume, work experience, other things that you're involved in that would make you valuable online to employers and companies that you'd be interested in working for.
Perfect. I could not have said that better. So if you're not on LinkedIn, I suggest it's free. Just do it. And here's why it's probably the most important. A lot of major companies, organizations, institutions use it. For example, the last company I worked for, we spent $50,000 a year for licenses for LinkedIn, and it was our main tool to find people. And so if you're on that network, it's a good way to be searched out. Okay, so that was the number one way, and the gentleman on the back got the answer, networking. So now let's talk about some other things as you prepare for career and jobs. Number two, have a flawless resume and a cover letter. When I say flawless resume, what do I mean? What do you think? Yeah, no grammatical errors. Yep. What else?
Correct information.
Correct information. Oh, yes. Please don't put information that's wrong. That's a real red flag, so that's great. Anything else about a resume?
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. And I agree, and those are all good things. And flawless means, right, it's accurate, there's no spelling errors, the grammar's good. And let me just tell you, your resume, on average, and you can read up on this, will get only a few seconds of airtime. And let me tell you what that means. If you apply, let's just make this up. Let's say you're an accounting major and you're ready to graduate and you apply for a job at Hawaiian Airlines. And you go online and you see an accounting job, it's entry level. Most likely that job will have probably 50 plus applicants. Depends. So the way it works is there's usually a recruiter, which I've done for many years, probably 50 applicants. Well, that recruiter is going to go through each resume probably less than 30 seconds, maybe a minute at the most, because they're looking through trying to screen out the best resumes. And what normally happens is they pass them on to the hiring manager. So the recruiter is usually the first one to look at it and then blast through it and said, okay, manager, here's your top 10. And then your resume gets a lot longer of a look. Okay, how about a cover letter? How many of you have sent cover letters? A few of you. Do you think it's important? Yeah? What do you think? Important? Okay. Why would a cover letter be important? So once again, I told you a recruiter is going to get 50 resumes for a job, and they're going to blast through it. What advantage does a cover letter give you? Go ahead.
Well, it gives you a summary of what's going to be in your resume, but it also gives you like more of an opportunity to let you know why you stand out and why you should be selected. Exactly. So it helps you to stand out. A resume is a set format, right? It's pretty set. It's going to talk about your skills, your education, your experience, and a few other things, but it doesn't tell about you, really, other than how to personalize it. You can also personalize a cover letter to the organization that you apply it to. So if I was applying for Hawaiian Airlines and it was an accounting job, well, maybe I had some experience or something specific to hospitality or travel that might help. Okay, so the third suggestion I have is get a mentor. Who in the room has a mentor? Okay. Helena, who's your mentor?
My mentor needs a mentor, so yes.
Yes. Who else has a mentor? Okay. Yes. Back.
Opioid management is Ann Springer.
Okay. Awesome. A lot of you raised your hands. If you didn't, I'm going to let you in on a secret. People love to be mentors. I don't think when I was in your shoes, I'm like, I wouldn't think that way. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to ask one of these professors or somebody you look up to, somebody you work with. But my experience is most people are flattered if you ask them to be a mentor. So if you don't have one, get one, and you'll have opportunities in your life to do that. Use the Career Center. Lots of great things to do there. Lots of help with your resume, cover letter, networking, and make sure and take advantage of that. Okay, we're going to do just a short exercise. So we're kind of set up that way. Get in just a group of 2 or 3. So if you're alone at a desk, just kind of move over. You can have 4 or whatever. So I'm going to give you a few instructions. It won't take you very long. But I want you to answer the questions. So you kind of need a scribe and then a spokesperson. But just 5 minutes or so. So the question is, how do you prepare for a job interview? Okay? Just blast out ideas. What do you do to prepare for a job interview? We'll go until about 20 after, so get in a small group, talk it through. Once again, a scribe and a spokesperson. Okay, take 5-6 minutes.
This room does not carry sound very well. You're very soft.
Okay, I'll speak up.
Yeah, just
I'll hold it closer.
it's not work. The microphone is not working.
It's just for the camera.
Which one?
No. Okay, I'll speak
I think
up.
that would help. I mean, if you had something you didn't have to hold.
Okay, I was going to see if Mariana want to scribe. Would you rather scribe for me, or do you want me to have Mariana do it? Just a few little, just their answers.
Oh, sure.
Hey.
Sorry.
It's okay. Sure. So I'm just going to take, when they're done, I'll ask 2 or 3 tables to give their answers. And if you just kind of write them down. Yeah, just, yeah. And it'll be quick because I'm going to go to the next topic pretty quick. But we'll probably try and get maybe 10 listed, something like that. Thank you, Huddy. Or should I say you're Vanna? Yes. Yeah.
Do you want us to be facing each other?
Yeah. I'll move them to where we're. And that is right after this.
So maybe I shouldn't go back to the seat.
Yeah, just ask Mariana to come up. Okay, just 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes.
You're being taken away.
Okay.
So why don't you sit up by Leanne? Because once we're done with this, then I'll have her first come up, and she and I'll do it, and then I'll.
Up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can just sit there.
Sorry, no, you're good. So you just decided not to go with the PowerPoint?
Well, I had it ready, and Anne said, she said, we can do that, but you might feel more comfortable, you know, and I'm glad. But it is my script, so. I know.
I told her I was like, she's gonna try to memorize it. I was like, I'm gonna read it. I even put 49,000 so I don't say 4,900. No,
You know, I'm going to read it for sure. 'Cause
No, he showed us the video clip. It's really funny. So.
The movie is one of the best movies. We watch it. I don't know how many times since we've been married. We've watched it. We still record it all the time. And we've watched it so many times. So some days.
No. Well, after Elder North showed it again to Stella and his wife and some other people. So we watched it again, and I was like, okay, I like watching movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's something I'll look into.
So is actresses the proper term, or actors for you, for women?
For actors.
Okay, I'll just keep it gender. It's not gender specific. Okay.
And I like to remain gender neutral.
Well, it's yeah, I don't know. I guess some people can take it differently. But it's they're different.
Okay, why don't we, let's get started. Thank you. I hope you came up with some good ideas. And I'm going to have my 2 actresses. I want to introduce you to my wife, Leanne. She's going to be my scribe, and then she's part of the acting in a moment. And Mariana, and a lot of you know her, and she'll help us out with the acting. Okay, so I'm going to choose, well, no, I'll ask for a volunteer first. Which table? You want to go, who? Okay, way in the back.
So one thing I like to do is prepare handwritten thank you notes for follow-ups so that I can stand out and also refresh who I am.
Awesome. Awesome idea. You said thank you note, right? Perfect. Okay, any other from that table? Okay, go ahead.
Something that we all talked about was getting your introduction or your mission statement and the why we should hire you statement. And then specifically, not just have the general quote, I'm a hard worker in there, but have specifics to make you stand out, because if you're just going to give them the general that everybody else says, they're not going to remember you.
Good. Excellent. What else? Yes, way in the back.
Sometimes I do a practice, like with somebody, just to be kind of familiarized. What if they ask a specific question?
Awesome. So I got to tell you a story. So I've recommended that my whole career, but I haven't had to interview for that many jobs. 3 out of my 6 jobs were because of people I knew, including this one. Now, I didn't even know I knew anybody here. The posting came up on an email, and I was sitting at home watching the Utah Jazz, and I just laughed and said, yeah, right. Working in Hawaii, I could never do that, could never afford it. And I sent my resume in, and unbeknownst to me, a colleague at graduate school, and I won't tell you how many years ago, but it was a long time ago, and she was a sister missionary here. Sister Lake saw my resume, and she looked at it and screened it, and then sent me an email saying, we have interest in you. And then, but what I was trying to get at is, and my wife knows this story, I sat and I prepared. And I wrote down 20 questions. And there's common, you'll find them on any kind of job site. There's kind of the top 20 questions. I practiced and practiced. And when they interviewed me, Sister Lake and the hiring committee asked me, now it's a little spiritual for a minute, probably 9 out of the 10 questions in a row. I was amazed. And so, amazing experience, but what I want to tell you is, yes, practice, practice, practice. Okay, a couple more. Yes, sorry.
One thing that we talked about is maybe studying the company or like the business you're going to for an interview. Kind of like get like their expectation from the position they're doing hirings for, and that way you, when you come for an interview, you easily have that connection with the interviewer, and you're like setting that platform for them that you already know what's going on with the business.
Awesome. Yes. So how do you prepare? You mentioned several things. Would you go to their website? Yeah. Go to the website. Yeah.
So actually this summer I was interviewing for an internship, and I went and talked to my dad about it, and he's like, you know what, let's go on this. He went on some specific website, and it looked up people's past experiences that they had stated with the company, and they had specifically put a set of questions that they had asked. And so I reviewed the questions and then knew what I was going to say, and then when it came time for the interview, they had actually said the same specific questions. So you can go on different websites and find out what other people had experienced.
Awesome. When you interview, you are going to impress somebody if you know the organization, if you've done your homework. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on interviewing panels and interviewing candidates, and you start to ask them questions, and they kind of go they just kind of give you these basic answers, and you know they haven't done their homework. You want to stand out. Remember I told you a lot of positions are going to have 50 resumes. So how can you stand out? Well, you do your research, and you do a lot of that. What else? How about 3 or 4 more things? Good.
One of the things we talked about is having or practice the skills that you say you got on your resume, because you never know, they might ask you to do something like in the interview on the spot, and you want to make sure that you got it down so you're not going to embarrass yourself or something.
Awesome. Do you have an example of what that might be?
Well, in class, one of my professors talked about how there was just this thing that we were talking about a coding example, and then the professor feels bad because he didn't talk about it as much in class, so the student who applied for that job, he was put in a lower rank because he didn't really know exactly.
Okay. Rain, you want to give your example? You just told me about this today.
Oh, like the Excel test?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to hire a new student right now, and so what I did, we do a lot of things with Excel and reports, so part of our interview process was requiring all the applicants to do
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to get to the main topic, and this is the fun part. So let me set this up. Let's see. So, all right, let me give you the background. Yeah, come on up. Yeah. Okay, this is from a movie. It's called Defending Your Life. It was in the early 90s, so probably none of you have ever seen it. Defending Your Life? Anybody? I didn't think so. Okay, so there's an old movie. It came out in the early 90s. There's a scene where the main character, his name's David, which I'll play, or Daniel, sorry, and he's practicing his salary negotiation skills with his wife, which I'll be doing in a minute, over the dinner table, so before the interview. And he thinks he's going to get an offer, so he's trying to role play with his wife. So he's trying to practice his negotiation skills the night before and to be ready for it. In the role play, he tells his wife, who represents the recruiter, that he will not take anything less than $65,000 a year. And so I will have my wife, Leanne, she's here, and we'll try and play this for you. Okay. Remember, she's my wife. Well, that's not a role play, that's real. And we're just role playing tonight. This is over dinner.
I would like to offer you $55,000.
I can't work for a penny under $65,000. I'm sorry.
Well, I can't pay you $65,000.
Then I can't work here.
I can offer you $58,000.
65.
59.
65.
61.
Let me make this plain. I cannot take this job for under $65,000 under no conditions. Okay, so that's the night before, and I was practicing, right? My negotiating skills, and okay, this is what happens in the movie. So now this is the next morning. I'm at the interview. Mariana's the recruiter. I walk in, I sit down, and she says,
Okay, Reed, I'm prepared to offer you the job for $49,000.
thank you, I'll take the job. Okay, that's what you don't want to do, right, with negotiation. Thank you so much for your help. The movie's much better. It's hilarious. But you get the point is, okay, what do you want to do? How do you negotiate? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's see here. Just get to the spot. Okay, so now we're going to turn our time to how to negotiate a starting pay. And if you're already in the workforce, you know, these items apply also. So there's tons of ways, we talked a little bit about this already, but how to find out what the job pays. Okay, let's use the example of the accountant. This is right out of school. This is a first-level accountant. It's posted on whatever website. It's for Hawaiian Airlines, and they're asking for an entry-level accountant. Okay, where do you look for jobs first? Give me several. There's so many places out there. Indeed? LinkedIn? Okay. What about the company website that you're interested in? Right? So when we're talking about pay, and if I mention that exact example of Hawaiian Airlines, you could go to all of these websites, PayScale, Glassdoor, Salary.com, LinkedIn, the Career Center, Monster, Indeed, and the actual company website. And you can get information about what that job will pay. If you go back many years ago when I was in your shoes, it was really hard. But there's so much information now that you can get a good idea. Let's see. Okay, so that's the way to find what the job will pay. Now, is it just salary? Is that your most important element? What do you think? Are there other elements of your job that may be worth something? What are they? Benefits? Like what?
Health benefits.
Okay. What else?
Stock options.
Stock options? Good one. What else?
Educational assistance.
Education? Ooh. Boy, you gotta like that one. I wish that wasn't very popular when I was in college. It's an awesome benefit. What about bonuses? Right? Especially as you get housing. Opportunities for growth. That's great. Okay, so there's the total package. There's retirement, time off, 401k. My son, and this is very common, he's going to school. He was here for 9 months. He took a semester off. He's an engineering student, so he'd love to be here, but we don't have engineering. But he's at Utah State University, and he works for a company called Icon Fitness. And they have basically free lunch and dinner. Not so much dinner, but so that's a big perk for him because he loves to eat, but it probably saves him, I don't know, $50, $100 a week, a month. And then where we live, we're from the Salt Lake area. If you've heard of Silicon Slopes now, that's the Lehigh area of Salt Lake. There's a ton of high-tech companies, and there's a lot of big perks there. So there's much more than just base pay. Okay, so some strategies. So how to negotiate your starting pay. Your starting pay sets the trajectory, and it's so important to get that first job and to get a competitive pay, because that's your starting point. Once you're in an organization, they're kind of set with salary budgets. They can only afford so much, and so the way you move up is based on your performance usually, but there's also other ways, promotions, but that first offer is pretty important. Okay, so let's talk about kind of the strategy here. Okay, so if let's take Hawaiian Airlines, let's say this accounting position, they call you up and they want to offer you the job. Are job offers usually done over the phone or in person? What would you think? Pardon? No? Some do. So I've worked for 6 organizations. I've probably made 10% job offers face-to-face. Almost all of them, in my experience, have been over the phone. Now, there's certainly exceptions to that. It's different industries. But think about it. You go through the interviewing process. Sometimes, at the very end, they'll give you a job offer. But a lot of times you go back and the hiring manager needs to have some discussions, and then a recruiter will call you and offer you the job. Okay, so just some things to think about. Do you think the recruiter says, I'd like to offer you the job. And then the recruiter says, how much do you want to make? Or, sorry, I said that wrong. So the recruiter calls you up and says, we'd like to offer you the job. And do you think the strategy is good for you to give a number first or for the company? Thoughts? Pardon me?
It's better for the company to give it first.
So why do you think that?
Because if you don't know what their range, that helps you understand what their range it might be or where they'd start. Because if you go in and you say a number that's really low, which we tend to do, we lowball ourselves. So if we have them tell us where they're at, then we can work with more. It's better to be informed.
Yes. Yes. So kind of negotiation 101, and I'm not saying all the time, but I think Charity has a good point there, and that's what I would suggest is if you can get the recruiter of the company to tell you, to give you the offer first, because let's take that example. So what's the average? I did some homework, just a little bit, on the internet. It wasn't hard. So what do you think the average pay is for this accountant I've been talking about, right out of school, and on Oahu? What do you think the starting salary would be? Take a guess. 45. Really close. 48,000. And so there's usually a salary range that the company's working with. And in this case, I'd say it's probably between about 42,000 and 55,000. And that's really what they have to work with, especially with new hires. They're all kind of in the same boat because there's not a lot of job experience yet. Okay, so if you can get the recruiter to say, well, we can offer you $55,000 a year, and that's a good number for you. You've done your homework. And it seems like on a little bit of the high end, do you think you should negotiate? What do you think? Helena, you're smiling.
I'm smiling. I would never hire anybody who would just give me one number. I always expect them to give me a range. And the question that I always have people ask is, what is the total compensation package? Because salary is small. The payroll added cost is anywhere between 27% to 43%. And so that's where you start, and then you go to the money itself. Right now, college graduates get 2018, 67,000 is the average. So you know that if accountants are making 42 here in Oahu, there's some who are making 100,000 somewhere else. And so you need to know what region you are and where you're applying for a job, because Silicon Valley is the 100%. But if you listen to news yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg said they pay some of the employees $15 an hour. That is not a living wage in Silicon Valley. And so you need to just do your homework. But I would always say, ask for, talk about the range, because then the recruiter has something to work with.
Yeah, so if the recruiter asks you, what Charity's comment, I think, is what I would recommend. The recruiter says, how much would you like to make? The answer could be, I'm confident that the organization will pay me what's competitive from my education, my experience. That's one way to negotiate to try and get them. Because in that example, and we've been talking about 48,000 is the average, and maybe this range from 42 to 55, maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, so in that case, in that example, if you throw out the number 42,000, what do you think the recruiter will do? Great, right? I'll take it. Because they want to save money. I mean, they want to be fair. Organizations want to be fair, but they also say, well, if you think that's fair, I think that's fair. Done. Okay, so that's kind of the way that works. Yes?
So my name is Sean. I have a question. Before we get into this job, doing school, finding an internship,
like how important is an internship or the pay?
Like when I'm finding internship, how can I approach them to get it to paid internship rather than going for unpaid internship? So for as a marketing student, there are many unpaid internships that they're willing to offer. But what I'm looking for is paid internship.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to answer that in two ways. If you go back to, I'm going to look at 50 resumes, guess what's going to stand out? Somebody who has an internship. So if you don't take it, so of course, we'd want a paid internship, but if you don't get a paid internship, I'd still take it. Was that kind of your?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because think about it. I get 50 resumes, I screen them through, I get to the top 10, and maybe only 5 of them have an internship. That shows you have experience. Or if you have a job. And I think many, how many of you have jobs? Okay. So that's great too. We're a little bit different here at BYU Hawaii. We have a lot of student employees, which is awesome. I just got back from meetings with my HR colleagues with a lot of other colleges, and we're way high, which is awesome. And that stands out, is that you've got work experience. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about how you go ahead.
I saw lots of students typing when you said that really great line. Do you mind just repeating your great line for everybody one more time? I think a lot of people want to use that.
Oh, okay. This, are you saying the one where the recruiter asks how much you want to make?
Yeah, I'm confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm confident that my experience and my education and my skills are commensurate with the job, and that you'll pay me a competitive wage, salary. Okay. Okay, so now you've got, let's say you've got the offer, and let's say you negotiate a bit. Well, let me ask you one more time. Do you think you should always negotiate or not? I need some input. Yes? Every time? Okay. Is there a downside?
Maybe depending on who you're interviewing with.
Not much, maybe. But let me give you an example. I think being a recruiter for, okay, I'm going to put out the number, 30 years. The only downside is if you're way up in the stars. So let's use the example of the accountant. 48,000, you've done your research, you know that's pretty average. There's a little low end, a little high end. So let's say 48 is the average, and the recruiter says, well, how much do you want to make? How much should the offer be? 70,000. Okay. There's a little bit of a downside because you're way up, way above what, if you've done your homework, you're way above what they can really pay. So if you're way out, out in left field, that may not work well for you. But let's just call it 90% of the time, I'd negotiate. And it's kind of expected. The statistics show that 37% of people negotiate. So I think it's a good idea. Helena, do you have a comment about that?
Yeah, I have a couple of recommendations. Take seriously what you're taught in your classes, because number one, there's something called case study. So most students say, I trained. That's little money. If you say, I developed the training, I trained, I monitored the training, and I evaluated the training, that's much more money. So that's important. And also when you negotiate, you go in as a humble person, but then this is my favorite saying. I trust, which is a feeling statement, that my qualifications will add value to your company. And then I look forward to hearing. Look is a seeing, hearing is a hearing word. And so, because you don't know what the recruiter is, so you have to speak to how they want to have information. But I think, what Ann said is you want to make sure that you are humble but confident. and that you have your weaknesses outlined, and that you have examples, and that your resume has your numbers, and you can explain how to do this. And if you say you speak Spanish, ustedes tienen que hablar español en su entrevista, porque vamos a hablar. Y si no pueden hablar, son muertos.
Great. I think you even said that better, the trust. So be humble, be genuine. Okay. So now you got the offer. Okay. The recruiter says, I'm going to offer you $49,000 a year. What are you going to do next? You're going to negotiate most of the time, right? So one way to do it is, you could, I've done it, don't give your answer. Most recruiters, most managers, and it's a really mature thing to do, is to say, thank you for the offer, I'd like to think about it. Could I have a day or two? Okay, think of the negotiation skills again. That puts you in a position to say, I wonder if the recruiter, I wonder if they have another job. But it's very common. And it's very common to go home to your spouse, your friend, your family, and say, I'd like to think about it. It gives you leverage. Because the recruiter, the manager is all excited, and the recruiter, this happens all the time. Well, they want to think about it over the weekend or a few days. But it puts you in, and there's really no downside, especially if you want to negotiate. Okay, go ahead.
A quick question. So I'm from Samoa, speaking from some experiences. So there have been some jobs, there were some jobs that I worked back home. And so during the interview, the managers or like whoever is doing the interview would not give you the starting rate in the beginning so that you know. And so how would you phrase it? What would you say to get them giving
Perfect.
you the minimum? Because sometimes they will ask you, I don't know if it's common, but sometimes they will let you work for like a week or 2 weeks to observe how you work in the company, and that's how they determine your starting rate. So during the interview, how would you ask them so that you can?
Yeah, good point. And I know different cultures, different places, slightly different. But I think the main question is, how do you find out what they'll pay, right? Isn't that's part of what we're trying to get at is, so why don't you ask the recruiter or the manager, what's the pay? You know? And a lot of times they don't want to give it up, or they don't want to give a range. Why don't they want to give a range? If I tell you the salary range for this accounting job at Hawaiian Airlines is $42,000 to $60,000. What number did you hear? Yeah, nobody hears 42, right? And that's why we recruiters, right? And they don't want to give that out because, and there's a range for a reason. Helena hit on it a bit. When you set up a salary range, there's an average, and that's usually the midpoint. And let's say in this case it was 48,000. Well, the high end is somebody who has maybe more skills, more education, 2 internships, a little more experience, whatever it is, to fit in that salary range. So it's good to always try and ask.
There is a website that actually keeps the salaries in different countries where you can just put, Samoa, Thailand, whatever it is, and it will give the salaries for different positions. And if I would be really smart, I would remember it right now, but I'm having a junior moment. So it's in my international HR note. So, but there's things where you can find out.
Great, great. Okay, I just have maybe 5 more minutes, and I'll leave a little bit of time for extra questions. So what if you have multiple offers? Okay, so the recruiter calls me up and says, I'd like to offer you the job for $49,000, and you have another offer. Do you want to give that up to the recruiter? Let's say Hawaiian Airlines calls you up and says $49,000, and you already have an offer at Queens for $51,000. What do you think?
I say use that to your advantage and just say someone else is offering me this much, what can you do about it? Or someone else is offering me a higher pay, and come back to them, and then you have a kind of a competitive.
Yeah, your negotiating power, if you have another offer, goes way up, right? Because they've already decided they want you, right? That's the beauty of, it's not over till they give you an offer. You're all excited, you're wondering, but once you get it, that means the company wants you. So if you have another offer, then I'd say use it. And I think you said that very well. Well, I'd like to think about it. I have another offer. And a lot of times in your interview, recruiters will ask, or managers, are you interviewing with any other companies? And so it's an advantage for you. Okay, home stretch here. Let's see, I covered most of this already. Yeah, I think I think Helena said this great. At the very end, you get a nice offer. Oh, question? Sorry?
Would you name the company that gives you the offer to them, or just say?
What do you think?
I think it depends on the company.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you, I think you use your judgment, but a lot of times when somebody's told me that, that's our first question. Who's it with? Is it with one of our competitors? And sometimes when we said be honest and genuine, I found out more than once, many times, that people really don't have offers. They kind of use it. They maybe have interviewed, and so they kind of cross the line and they say, well, I've got another offer, and they really don't. So, go ahead.
Okay, you just give me a thought. You want to be very careful because companies hire people like me. And before you say that you have another offer, I will already tell from your face if you have or not. Because people are taught to read, especially in HR, the micro expressions in your face. And companies hire me to go and sit in an interview, and the only job I have is lie, truth, lie, oh, makeup, that story. And so what really, I'm calling you first name here, is saying is you line up the salary that you have, but remember he talked about payroll added cost, so you get all your benefits. So your 42,000 might be better money with the benefits than your, what else we were getting, 59, 61 without benefits. So you want to line everything up and always speak the truth, because somebody can read the lie very easily. And you think, oh, I'm not lying, they're not looking at my face. Your nose hairs will start to wiggle and you go like this, because it happens in the operation, what comes out of your mouth.
So, true story. It hasn't happened very often. We interviewed a gentleman many years ago, and he had Stanford bachelor's degree on his resume. And we do a background check. Most companies I've worked for, they do a background check. And the background company called the university and didn't have record of his degree. He went there, but here's the difference, right? To be honest, he put he said Bachelor of Science, whatever. And so we confronted him. And we didn't hire him. He wasn't truthful. So, great. And thank you for the comments on total compensation. And when you've got two competing offers, so use the negotiation. But remember, it's total compensation. And which organization do you want to work for? Which has the most potential? So even though one may be 2,000 more, maybe you accept the lower one because it's a better organization for you. Okay, I'm just going to summarize really quick and just answer any last questions. So I named this Your Payday. So I have a payday for you on your way out. And I list these top 5 things that you should remember about when you're preparing for your job. Network, prepare for your flawless resume and your cover letter. Get a mentor. Use the Career Center. and prepare more than any other candidate. Just do it. It's so easy to apply for a job online, right? Sometimes you can do it in less than 2 or 3 minutes. But if you follow up and do a cover letter, you're going to put yourself ahead. And then remember all the things we discussed about how to negotiate. Okay, just a few minutes left. Are there any last questions? Yes?
Would there ever be a company when you throw out a number, like, say they offer you $42,000, you're like, oh, well, I would like 60,000, and like, sorry, we can't offer you that. It's over. Like, we don't have, we just can't do that.
You know, it's funny. Today, I was going over this a little bit with some of my staff, and that very issue. It's rare. And Elder North works in my department with, he's a senior missionary. He's a senior vice president of HR for a couple of big companies. And we kind of had the same opinion. It's pretty rare if you shoot for the stars that a company would pull the offer away. But it's just not the greatest judgment. They're like, you know, in that example, when you know you're right out of college, you're competing with very similar resumes and people. If you shoot way up there, it's a little risky. So, good question. But, you know, in this case, I suggest you ask for 5, 10, 15% more. So in that $48,000 example, you know, maybe ask for 52 or 55. Because what's the recruiter likely to do? So let's say you go to, let's say, well, I really think that my experience and my education, that I think I would propose that I make $55,000. Well, the recruiter's probably going to come back and just a little more negotiation, right? So sometimes it's good to start high. Any other questions?
You know, you mentioned experience. 2 years experience is the same as another degree. And so the better your resume, the higher you are. And if you don't get the money, you can always negotiate an early review or, you know, all kinds of different things that will get your salary up. But don't ever come across as arrogant, because many times I would say, well, thank you very much. It was nice to meet you, and the interview is over, and then you have nothing. But also, I want you to all know that we have the money in the bank if we want. If we want you, we will pay it. Yeah. And we have to do creative, you know, financing, but if somebody wants you, they will pay the money. But
yeah. So get as much work experience as you can during school, if you're able to do that. Get an internship, because once again, if I get those 5 top resumes, and 2 of those resumes don't have any work experience, think how you, when you get into the interview, well, I've worked 4 years in the accounting department at BYU as a student. Like Helena said, you can use that to your leverage to get your salary higher too, because the other resume maybe just has the person went to school, and there's nothing bad about that because grades are really important, but just think how you put yourself ahead of the other person that you're competing against. Any last questions? Yes?
If you already have a job that's relevant to your major, is it still worth it to apply for an internship? Because you already
What do you think? Either or? Is that what you said? So if you already have, I always think, okay, so give me an example. Is that you?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay, so give me your example. You have a full-time job?
No, it's part-time student position, so I work in the PCC office, and I work doing like a product information management support. That's like my official title. And then my degree is business like operations, so working more like behind the scenes. So I work like managing the online retail stores and optimizing the products to sell.
Oh, that's great. I would say both. And I would say an internship stands out. It does. Your work experience student is really good, but an internship, I think, stands out. Okay, my time's up. So thank you very much, and I'll be at the door handing out your payday. Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, sorry.
I'm able to make network with a lot of people. So how can I keep these networks alive? Like in what other ways? For example, I'm meeting a senior vice president of a company. I cannot say hi, how are you? And just talk to him in a random way, just sending messages. So how can I reach out to him in a professional manner?
Okay, so how can you network, right? With senior.
Network, so how can I keep the network alive and just.
Yeah, what do you think? What are some ideas?
Maybe send a Christmas card. That would be just assuming that would be the one card just suddenly.
Okay, I can't remember the name. So LinkedIn is another great place. You never know. So like Facebook, right? Friending, LinkedIn, you can send, anybody a message saying add me to your network. I get probably 20 a week because I'm an HR person, right? Everybody wants to get to know me a little bit. But that network, so then it's who you know. So it's hard, like with senior people. I get it. They're busy, but you never know. What harm does it do to try? Go ahead.
And I think what you said in the beginning of your presentation is so important. You have to have good mentors. He could not go to a CEO and say, give me some time. If you have a mentor, like I can go to anybody, well, not anybody, but,
Most.
Queen Elizabeth didn't answer my letter. But, if your mentor can go and introduce and open the doors for you and talk about you and say, if you have time or who else would you do? And that's the way to open. And that's why we have the Management Society. Because if I look back, we have had Management Society now for 12 years. Every person that has come through Management Society and has asked me to help them with a job search got the job where they wanted. Because a lot of times we get your resume, we contact them, we hand carry it to the hiring manager or HR or wherever it needs to go. And then you have the job. And now these people are high. So the mentor and talking to the mentor is really important because they can help open doors for you where you can open doors. But I would say be courageous and do everything you can and contact them. I get weird people contacting me all the time and I respond because that's polite.
Yeah, you never know. So Mariana works for me in HR. She's doing an internship, but she's also looking for a full-time job. As much as I hate that, because she's great, I want to help her. I want to be a mentor to her. She's targeted a couple of areas. One of them is Utah. Well, I spent 20 years of my career in Utah, and I told her, I said, I want to be a mentor. When you see openings, or if I know of openings, LinkedIn is so powerful. Because let's say I see a job on LinkedIn that is with Vivint, or there's several. I know the head of HR there, or others. And do you think I'm going to be happy, because Mariana works for me, I see the work that she does, to call up, like Helena said, I'm not there, but I'd actually walk her resume if I was in the area, but I'll call that person. And so that mentorship is really important, so get a mentor. Anything else? Yes?
Can I just reiterate that and how important it is, because I was a mentor for a lady. She hired me to get a job this last year, and she's in her 50s, and she just wanted to find the job of her dreams and stuff, and I just happen to have a lot of connections in Utah, and she wanted to work for doTERRA, and I happen to know quite a few main people there, and I really, really endorse her. I mean, she's like, I've hired and fired a lot of people,
So I know what a good employee is, and I would hire her in 2 seconds. And to be able to call someone and say, look, who do you know within the organization that I can get a hold of that can help? Anyway, she has the job, but it was, you do not want to pass her up, and you want employees like her, you know, because she's the one, she's the gold that you've been looking for. She'll be loyal, she'll go the extra mile, she'll everything, but it's who you know and that connection. And don't fluff them up if they're not needing to be fluffed up. But she's a real deal. I said that, she's the real deal. So, and I mean, she had to do the work, but I got her in.
That's great. Yeah. That's awesome. Anything else?
Be the real deal.
Be the real deal.
Be the real deal.
Okay, thank you so much.